Good evening. It's wonderful to see everybody tonight. We're going to address what I think is a very important question that seems to be a question that I get very often, or maybe not even a question, more of a comment. And I would like to explain the rationale behind it and how exactly it works. And that is, if somebody asks you, what is the most appealing or the most comfortable or the thing you like most about Chabad? A very common answer that I get is that Chabad is non-judgmental. You ever heard that? Or have you thought that yourself? And so the question is, what does that mean to be non-judgmental? And that's what we're going to address today. This idea of judgmental and how to be non-judgmental. Because I think that is a key to us living a healthier, a happier, a more fulfilling life. It becomes very stressful, I believe, if we constantly walk around and judge everybody. Because then we never find peace of mind. We're always looking for the next thing or always commenting on the next thing. And so today we're going to discuss this idea of judgmental, of judging or not judging, if we could judge, if we should judge, or why we shouldn't judge, and so on. Anyone that has ever driven on the highway can probably agree with me on this, that when you drive on the highway, anyone going faster than you is a crazy maniac who's going to get into an accident in a second. Anyone going slower than you is the worst driver, is going to cause all the traffic, and is just disturbing the whole road, and they should move over to off the highway or something. So whenever so often in life, the things that we do, we tend to judge everybody around our behavior. So if we're doing something one way, we say, this is the best way to do it. Any other way is got to be crazy, got to be wrong. I don't know if you ever experienced something, maybe you've, in the synagogue, you stood and you prayed, and you finished a certain prayer, and then you look around, and you see some people are still saying the prayer, and some people finish the prayer. The people that have finished it already say, well, how did they read it so fast? They probably haven't concentrated on a word they said. The people that are reading it really slow, you think, wow, why are they reading it so slow? They don't know how to read. What's wrong with them? So we end up judging the world around our behavior. Obviously, all of these are incorrect. The person going fast on the highway or slow on the highway doesn't mean to say that you're going the exact correct speed, the way everybody should go. So let's analyze this idea of judging people and see if we can understand it better. One of the key principles of this idea is why we tend to judge people is action versus intention. Very often, we tend to view other people's actions and only decide based on their actions, whereby ourselves, we look at not only our actions, but we also look at our intentions. So for example, if you've been to a meeting and your coworker comes late to the meeting, what are you thinking? That person is irresponsible. How can they be so late? How can they not be considerate of everybody else sitting in the meeting? When you come late to the meeting, what do you say? Well, there was traffic, I had things I had to do, I had an assignment I had to finish on my desk, a couple emails I had to get to, a text that came in the last minute, whatever it is. Or even, I'm a parent, and you have a phone, so when you see another parent on the phone, and you see their kids tugging on them, what do you end up saying? Oh, that parent, irresponsible parent. Don't they know the kids are looking for them, wants them to pay attention? Why are they busy on their phone? They must be a phone addict or whatever it is, constantly looking on their phone. But when I do it, all of a sudden I say, oh no, that important text came in, an important email came in, even though my kids need my attention. So what happens is we end up judging ourselves based on our intentions, and the other person solely based on the actions. Obviously, this is the incorrect way to behave. And so let's begin with the verse of the Torah that tells us how one is supposed to look upon their fellow human being. Okay. Can you see it? All right, text number 1 says like this. Oops. The verse says, Lo sasu avel b'mishpat lo sisa pnei dov lo seda pnei gadol b'tzedek tishbeit amitecha. This is a verse in Leviticus chapter 19. You shall commit no injustice in judgment. You shall not favor a poor person or respect a great man. You shall judge your fellow with righteousness. This is the verse. Rashi comes. Rashi is the commentary on the Torah. This guy Rashi over here. And Rashi says like this: judge your fellow with righteousness. This is to be understood according to the apparent meaning. Another explanation is judge your fellow favorably, give him the benefit of the doubt. So we see here a verse in the Torah, and we see Rashi's commentary. The verse is talking about a judge. When two people come to the judge in a case, so the judge should not look at the poor person with a certain rationale, certain thinking, and shouldn't look at the rich person a certain way. You have to judge both people equally. Many times when we see somebody that is well-dressed, you may judge them favorably, and someone that is not well-dressed or looks poor or whatever, you may unfortunately judge them improperly. So the Torah therefore says no such a thing. If you're the judge, you have to be impartial and judge everybody equally. And you should, the words that the verse uses is, you should judge your fellow with righteousness. Okay. Rashi comes along and he tells us like this. What is this verse telling us? He's actually telling us that it's a mitzvah, it's a commandment. And it gives us two explanations into the verse. The first one is literally, when someone is coming to you in a case, you have to judge both people with righteousness. Then he gives us the second meaning, and he says, have a done as kol ha'adam l'chafsuchus. Judge everybody favorably. What does that mean, to judge everybody favorably? Rashi is telling us we actually have to go a step further than simply looking at the case in front of us. And we have to find a favor in our eyes about that person. What does that mean? We have to find favor in our eyes about that person. That sometimes a teacher can mark a test, and they can mark a test, the student's test, exactly based on what answers the student gave to that particular question. But then you have another teacher that can mark the student's test, but will look deeper into not just the answer, but also look into how the student answered those questions. Or even deeper than that, the teacher will look into the effort that the student put into studying for the test and preparing for the test. In other words, two students coming into a classroom and taking the same test, we cannot expect the same results if both of them are coming from completely different homes. One student, unfortunately, could come from a home that did not have breakfast in the morning, and the other student is coming from a home that they had a lavish breakfast. So certainly, when the student is sitting down in class, we must expect a different outcome of both those students, because it's impossible for the student that's coming with a hungry stomach to learn in the same way that the student that's coming with a full stomach. Now, it doesn't mean we have to give the student a pass. No, of course, they have to give their effort 100%. But we have to judge them favorably. In other words, it's important for us to understand what the student is going through, and that will help us address what the student is dealing with and how to help the student study better. Okay? And this is what Rashi is telling us, that when we face another human being, any human being, no matter what the story is, no matter what the circumstances is, we have to judge them favorably. You have no idea what that person was going through that day just before they met you, the day before, or the week before, or their childhood. We have no way of understanding that. Therefore, the Torah says, judge everybody favorably. Let's go a little bit deeper. Is it possible for someone who has a great position, for someone who's a leader, a professor, a teacher, a CEO, is it possible for such a person to judge all the subordinates or anybody else in that company equally? Is it possible for the teacher not to judge students differently? Or is it possible for someone that has a respectable position not to look down at someone who did not earn those qualifications? And the answer should be, we should hope so. We should hope that they would not judge anybody that is not like them. Now, can we expect that from human beings? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. What the Torah is telling us is that we should always expect this from human beings. That as a leader, as a teacher, as a CEO, as an employer, we should always look at everybody in a respectful manner and never look down at anybody. How can we do that? And that's the question we want to address today. How is it possible to do that? If I earned a degree, 5 degrees, I speak many languages, whatever it is, so why is it that I should not have the ability to look down at this other person who wasted their life away, didn't get a good job, didn't work hard? Why should I not judge that person? But the Torah clearly says we have no right to judge that person. But how do we attain this level? How do we accomplish this? So let's begin with one of the great leaders of the Jewish people. And his name was Moshe, Moses. Moses was the leader of the Jewish people, took the Jews out of Egypt, and he brought them just to the promised land. He did not bring them into the promised land. Moses was not able to go in. Joshua brought them into the promised land. But Moses led them out of Egypt through their harshest times while they were slaves in Egypt, through the desert, with all their complaints. And let's see, what does the Torah call Moshe? How does the Torah refer to Moshe? He says like this, that Moses, text number 2, Va'ish Moshe ana mikala adam ashal pnei ha'adama. Now, this man, Moses, was exceedingly humble, more so than any person on the face of the earth. Rashi, the commentary on the Torah, tells us, what does it mean he was humble? It means modest and patient. Let's read this little box over here on the bottom. Humility. From the compliment given to Moses, we can infer that although there were instances where Moses rebuked and criticized the Jewish people, it was never a personal, here's the key word, judgment on them, in which he would consider them inferior to himself. This teaches us that the antidote for being judgmental is not moral ambivalence, but rather humility. I want to read this again because this is very important. Although Moses rebuked and criticized the Jewish people, It was never a personal judgment on them in which he would consider them inferior to himself. This teaches us that the antidote for being judgmental is not moral ambivalence, but rather humility. What is the Torah telling us? By calling Moshe the most humble person on the face of the earth, it could have used many different words to describe the greatness of Moses. A great scholar, he was patient, he was kind. Yet the Torah doesn't say that. It says he was humble. What is this quality of humility? The quality of humility is very important when it comes to understanding another human being. Because if we are not humble, if we are egotistical, if we are full of ourselves, we cannot see another person. If we are humble, we make room for another person. Meaning to say, if we are humble, we don't judge another person. We would like to uplift them if they're doing something wrong, and we will criticize them. We will criticize them not because of who they are, not be mean to them, not try to hurt their feelings, but we will try to inspire them. Let's look at this inside again. The answer of being judgmental is not moral ambivalence, but rather humility. Okay? So let's understand now, if that's what it is, humility is so important. Let's understand what exactly humility is. And is humility attainable to everybody? Can anybody be humble? There's a story that is told of a boy who came to his rabbi, and he tells the rabbi, he says, do you think that I'm mature enough to get married? Okay? So the rabbi says, you know, you're a very good boy, you're very smart, you work hard, you come from a good family, you dress nicely, you're talented, but you have one major flaw, and that is that you're arrogant. Okay? And so the boy begins to work on himself. 6 months later, he comes to the teacher, he says, Rabbi, I have spent the last 6 months studying humility. And now I think I can honestly say I'm ready to get married. After all, I'm not only intelligent, I don't only come from a good family, I'm not only handsome, I'm not only talented, but now I'm also humble. So of course the teacher sent him back to school. The point is that we can't learn to be humble. What does it mean we can't learn to be humble? It means you can't open up a book and say, okay, this is what a humble person needs to do. You know, or you can't study about humility. You become humble just by being humble. Let's analyze this for a moment. There are actually 4 steps that the Torah gives us about how one can attain humility. Okay? Number 1. The first thing is we learn from Moshe. What was Moshe's quality? How did indeed Moshe attain this gift or this praise that God gave him by saying that he was the most humble person on the face of the earth? That is a huge compliment for anyone to receive. How did God give Moshe such a big compliment? And in fact, we don't see God gave this compliment to anybody else. So what exactly did Moshe do to attain this compliment? And he did a very simple thing. Moshe was the leader of the Jewish people. He led the Jewish people for 40 years during their hardest, the most harshest times of existence, during their slavery in Egypt. He led them through the Dead Sea, through the splitting of the sea. He gave them the Torah on Mount Sinai. Moshe did his incredible things. The gift that he gave us on Mount Sinai, only Moshe was able to do. Moses is the only one to do it. So I ask you, how is it possible for Moses not to be humble? How could he not felt a little bit pride? I'm the leader of these ungrateful people who constantly complain, constantly argue with me, constantly want more and more from God. How could Moses not feel any bit of pride? And Moses taught us a very important lesson. He did this one very simple thing. You want to know what he did? Moses said like this, that if anybody else had the gift that God gave me, they would have done a much better job than me. True, I'm the leader of the Jewish people. And true, I've led them out of Egypt. I've given them the Torah Mount Sinai. God gave it to me to give to the Jewish people. I've helped my brother Aaron. We've smitten the Egyptians, of course, with God. God sent the plagues on the Egyptians. Moses was the one that carried it out. How did he not feel any ego, any self-pride? Because he said, if someone else was chosen by God, I didn't do anything. God chose me. Someone else was chosen by God and did these things, they would have done a job much better than me. So that's number one. Number one step in being humble is recognizing the talents that we have, not to ignore the gifts that we were given, understanding that we have unbelievable gifts and unbelievable talents, but recognizing that if someone else had them, they would have done a better job than us. Even if we're doing our best, and we have to do our best. But if someone else had that, they probably would have done even better than that. Number two, the second thing is act humbly. There was a girl who once came to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and she said she wants to get married, but she's very selfish. And she can't get married because she just has this selfish tendency, and it's all about me, all about, and therefore, how can I get married and share myself with somebody else? What should I do? She wasn't happy with this fact that she was selfish. She wanted to change herself. So the Rebbe didn't say, go learn about not being selfish. The Rebbe said, go out and do kind things to somebody else. Get used to doing nice things. Get used to being humble. Now, in our time, it's very hard to do that. I admit it's very hard. We want to post every beautiful picture of ourselves on Facebook and Instagram. I get it. We want to post every beautiful song that we ever sang on TikTok. I understand. It's not easy. We live in difficult times. And sometimes we have what to share. It doesn't mean we shouldn't share it. But it means not to flaunt ourselves. Okay? Don't be a self-promoter. Don't try to outdo the person next to you. You have something to say it, and then sit down. That's what it means to act humbly. I'll be honest, when I first moved to Arizona, I've been taught these teachings about being humble my whole life. This Hasidics teaches this. The Hasidic teachings talk about this. And when I came to Arizona, I knew that the only way we can spread the word that we're in town is if I send out press releases to the newspaper. They say that we're in town. And so that's what we did. We sent out a press release to all the newspapers that Chabad is in town, opening up in the East Valley. And many reporters called me up. I left my number. They called me up. They want to do an interview. And I thought, me? Who am I to take an interview? I don't want my name in the newspaper. I don't want my face in the newspaper. It's not about me. It's about the organization that we're starting. So I had to come to terms with this idea that even though my face will be in the newspaper and I'm going to be quoted in the newspaper, it's not about me. Sometimes you have to put yourself out there in order to advance a certain cause or to share a certain message. Sometimes you have to do that, even if it's uncomfortable. So sometimes we have to put something on Facebook if we have the ability to teach other people. But as long as it's not about me and my own pride or my own getting famous or whatever it is, that's not what it's about. So it's simply opportunity was given to whoever it is, certain talents, to be able to teach something. That's it. So that's what it means to be humble. Just act humbly. Do humble things. Let someone else go in front of you. Let someone else speak. You don't have to always be the one, the loudest voice to say whatever it is. That's number 2. Number 3, so just to reiterate, number 1 is recognize our talents, but understand that if someone else had the talents, they'll do a better job than us. Number 2, just behave humbly. Just act humbly, that's it. Number 3, think about things that make us humble. Let's analyze this. Let's understand this for a moment, okay? There are times in our life that we do things that we don't want anybody to know about. Or there are times that we feel a certain way or we think a certain way that we may be embarrassed about. Or even not embarrassed about. We think a certain way that of another person that is inappropriate. So when that happens, that should cause us to be humble. Why? Because I have to tell myself, wait a second. Oh, I'm not perfect. Look, I'm thinking in a way I shouldn't think. I may have said something I shouldn't have said. The more we think about this, the more we realize our weaknesses, our weak links. Now, not to get us depressed, as we spoke last week, we have to be happy and joyful. But the point is that it's important for us to recognize that we also have flaws. And that will lead us to a degree of humility. At the same time that we recognize that, we also have to remember that we have tremendous abilities, tremendous talents. Let's not take that away. But remember, we're working on our humility. One step of that is think about how we can be more humble. Number 4, within that, number 3 of thinking about how I can be humble is a very important word, and that is accountability. If we really spend time thinking about all of this, all our pride, our self-pride will flee from us and never return again. How can I, even for one moment, think that I'm better than somebody else? Right? Again, it doesn't mean that I shouldn't recognize my talents, I shouldn't use my talents. But what it means is that it's very important for me to remind myself to be humble. And if I can't be humble in front of another person because I'm feeling a degree of self-pride, I have to burst that bubble. How do I burst that? By thinking about my accountability. The Tanya tells us like this. The Alter Rebbe, the founder of the Chabad movement, shares with us this amazing thought. And he says like this. If you're going in the marketplace, you're going to the supermarket, okay, to buy something. Do you go around and saying, I'm the one standing here and buying this expensive item, and this cashier standing behind the counter is just ringing me up? They probably can't afford this expensive item. Hopefully none of us ever think that. The Tanya goes further and it says like this, that I know how to control my thoughts. I know how to control my eyes. I know how to control my feelings. I know how to control my emotions. How can it be that so-and-so always fails at controlling their eyes, their feelings, their anger, whatever it is that their outbursts. So the Tanya says like this, that we have no way of ever putting ourselves in the shoes of somebody else, because we have no way of ever knowing or ever experiencing exactly what the other person experienced. Very simple. Tanya says like this. Sometimes you may have seen something, and that event that you saw reformulated the way you think. You may have heard something that changed the course of your life, for good or for bad. You may have had a teacher that changed the course of your life. You may have a friend that did something to you that changed the course of your life, a family member, whatever it is. Nobody can ever put themselves in your shoes. No one can ever experience that exact same thing. I want to go off topic for one moment. Think about someone who, unfortunately, who is a victim of abuse. It's impossible for anyone to understand what that person went through. Now, if you went through abuse also, you may be able to feel with them, but you cannot know exactly what they're going through or what they went through. Every person goes through it their own way. The same thing can be in the reverse. Someone that grew up in an extremely privileged home, we cannot understand what they went through growing up in such a privileged home. Even someone else who grew up in a privileged home cannot know exactly what they went through growing up in a privileged home. Therefore, the Alter Rebbe says, we can never judge another person. We cannot ever put ourselves in their shoes. Impossible. So this is the fourth thing. Know that we can never put ourselves in someone else's shoes. Therefore, what is the only outcome of that thought process? That we cannot be judgmental. Not only that, we have to be humble in front of the other person. Look at the life that the person made out of themselves, regardless of their challenges. Wow. Unbelievable. I'm humbled in front of this person. I'm even humbled just the fact that they wake up in the morning and go out of the house. That's an incredible accomplishment. I'm humbled that they even get dressed in the morning. They experience so much pain and suffering in their life. That is an unbelievable accomplishment. So therefore, if you think about all these things, how can we possibly judge anybody? How can we even think about judging somebody? How can it enter into our mind to think for one moment that we can judge the other person? Because we don't know the circumstances that the other one went through. Therefore, sometimes I feel maybe confusion in my heart or anger in the heart. Someone has an impulse. We can't judge them. We don't know what they went through that's causing them to think that. So compassion dissolves the sense of judgment. The sense that you are less valuable because of the choices that you make. And so this is why there are two important points we're making here. Number one, be compassionate. Number two, there's another very important principle, and that is that God judges us the way we judge others. Many people are afraid that God is going to judge us harshly. Oh my gosh, I'm afraid. What is God going to think of me? Oh, well, don't worry about it. Don't be afraid. God will just judge you how you judge others. You judge others nicely, He'll judge it to you the same way. And so therefore, sometimes it's hard for us not to judge another person. So we have to do is we have to think about it. Think about it. Think about ourselves. Make an accounting of our own deeds. Think about the gifts that we were given, and maybe that person, if they were given our gifts, would be much better. You have to think about that we don't know what that person went through, what kind of struggles they went through. But more importantly, we actually should be, sometimes can be amazed by the other person. You know why? Because we look at ourselves that for me to get a good mark on the test was very easy. No problem, I had no challenge. This subject matter was very easy for me. But the other person had to struggle for it. They pushed themselves. And they, as a result of that, their hard work, they became much better. So who am I to judge that other person? Who am I? I have no right to do it. There's a story that is told of the Holy Baal Shem Tov that one time there were two people that lived in the city. One was a Torah scholar, and the other was a nice, kind Jewish individual. Every morning, the Torah scholar would get up early, would go to the synagogue and begin to study and pray, and would spend a good 5-6 hours every morning in the synagogue studying and praying. This other fellow had to earn a living. So he would get up early morning and he had no choice. He would go chop some wood and sell the wood to the people that were looking to buy wood to warm their house during the winter months. After doing this for 5-6 hours, he would go to the synagogue and start to pray. Every day, as this simple Jew walked into the synagogue, the Torah scholar would leave the synagogue. The Torah scholar would look at this simple Jew and say, what's going on over here? It's 11 o'clock in the morning and you're only coming to the synagogue now. What a bum. What a nothing. This is the way you're coming to God. 11 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning. I've been here already for 6 hours studying and learning. He thought this to him. He didn't say it, but he thought this to himself. In the meantime, this other guy that had to go out and earn a living, he had to sell the things before the day started, or else people are going to buy from other people. Every morning he walked by the scholar, he says, oh, he's so lucky that he can sit and study for 5-6 hours in the morning, undisturbed, not have to worry about his livelihood. He's such a lucky individual. It happened that both of these people died on the same day. They both came to heaven. And the angels came to judge these two people, the prosecuting angel and the defense angel. The prosecuting angel looked at this Torah scholar and said, well, every morning this guy would lift his nose up and look down at this simple Jew who was working his best, doing what he can do to earn a living, and still after backbreaking work would come to pray, but every day he would look down at this person. And so they took all his bad deeds, all these bad feelings, bad thoughts that the guy had, and put it onto the scale, and it weighed way down all the few good things that the guy did. In the meantime, the angel comes to the simple Jew and he looks at him and he looks at all his deeds and he says, wow. Every morning he would come up and he would look, wow, look how lucky he is that he can stand and pray undisturbed. And he can study without any worries. If only I was like him. All these praises that he heaped upon the scholar were placed on his scale and it lifted up all his good deeds to the top. And of course, the angels ruled that the scholar has to go to purgatory to cleanse his sins, so to speak, and the simple Jew goes straight into heaven because he's such a holy individual. So what do we see from this story? We see a very simple thing that Baal Shem Tov tells us, that we really do not have a right to judge another person. We have no idea what the other person is going through or what challenges that other person has to have or has in order to accomplish what they want to accomplish. Maybe for one person it's easy to get up and to pray and to concentrate on the prayers. Maybe for another person it's very hard. Maybe for one person it's easy to eat kosher, and for another person it's very difficult. Maybe for one person it's easy to give charity, for another person it's much harder. But we don't know. Each person has that personal relationship with God. That is a question that we have to ask. How much effort do I put into it? How much do I push myself to do the right thing? But we certainly cannot look at somebody else and judge anybody else for what they're doing or what they're not doing. And when we come to this understanding, this realization, we will never judge another person. In fact, I've shared this story before, but it's worth sharing it again, that there was a person who came to the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he said, I don't understand. I go to a Chabad synagogue, and there's a guy that comes in every day to pray, or I should say better, he comes every day during the times of prayer. He doesn't pray, but he sits there with a newspaper and reads the newspaper. You should tell your students in your synagogue to kick the guy out. What kind of business is this? He's coming to the synagogue, he's not praying, he's just reading a newspaper. So Rebbe said, how amazing is this guy? He went through the Holocaust and he had the most difficult, challenging of lives. His family died, yet he knows that there's a minyan going on, there's a prayer service going on, and they need help with that prayer service. He's going to show up in the synagogue. I don't believe in God anymore, he may tell you. But when it comes to helping out a fellow Jew, he's going to be there. He's not going to pray, but he's in the synagogue to help somebody out. That is the most beautiful thing. I always share this story, and I really believe it. There are people that come to our synagogue and they come in on the Sabbath towards the end of the prayers. Let's say we finish at 12 o'clock, they come 11:55. Because we have a nice, beautiful, delicious kiddush, a nice lunch, and people like to come just for that. You know, there's a term for it. It's called JFKs, just for kiddush. But when I see a person coming in for the kiddush, I say, how beautiful is that? How amazing. Look at the love that this person has for their fellow Jews. All they want to do is come and hang out and chat with other Jews. That's a beautiful thing. Some people come to the synagogue to pray. That's amazing. Some people come to the synagogue for the social life. That's also amazing. Everyone does their thing and they connect to God the way they connect to God. Should everybody be praying? Absolutely. Should everybody be friendly? Absolutely, of course. There was a rabbi of a synagogue that didn't like the fact that everybody in the synagogue was talking. Towards the end of the prayers, everyone would just gather around and chat. He didn't like this. He felt that the synagogue is really a place that you should focus on spirituality, not talk about mundane matters. So he made a rule that from now on, no one can talk anymore in the synagogue. It's not the place to do it. And I always say that the lobby in our synagogue is the most used room. Because people like to hang out there and talk throughout the service. Less people are sitting and praying, more people are out there talking. So this rabbi said, no more talking in the synagogue. That's it. It's not right. A month later, the rabbi got up and says, forget it. Everyone continue talking. They said, what happened? He said, very simple. When people would talk in the synagogue, they would hear, Moshe's car broke down and he needs money to get it fixed. So-and-so lost his job and he needs someone to help him find a job. So-and-so has a medical problem. They need a medical recommendation. Someone else may need an attorney, and this attorney is good for this particular case. But once I said that no one can speak in the synagogue anymore, nobody knew anybody else's business. No one knew what's going on. So no one was able to help anybody else. Therefore, he says, continue talking. Because the good that came out of the talking is better than the bad that came out of the not talking. Or better than the good that came out of the not talking. So continue talking. And that's what we're talking about today. When it comes to another individual, we cannot judge them. We have no idea what they're going through. We just have to be incredibly grateful for the things we do experience, that we do find in the other person. And we are very blessed to get to know people and to meet people. How lucky we are to learn from them, learn from their qualities, and grow from them. With that, I want to thank you for joining. Next week, we're going to talk about why in Judaism is observance is so important. Why this focus on all these detailed laws and detailed practices. I want to thank you very much. Have a good week. And any questions? Can you unmute yourself if you have a question? Nope. All right. Have a good night, everyone. It's good seeing you. Take care. All the best.
Good night.
Thank you.
Rabbi,
Yeah?
I want to introduce you to my friend Bob Bohansky. Bob, can you unmute? No, don't get up. Don't get up. Don't get up. That's okay. So I'm hoping you'll talk soon, but okay. That's Bob Bohansky. And then I invited my other friend, Stephen Fodor.
Hello. How are you? He's right here. Yes, he's right here. Hi, Steve. How are you?
Okay.
All right, wonderful. Good.
Oh, there he is. There's Bob.
Yeah. I met Bob. He was the first one to come on today.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So just wanted
Wonderful.
to make it formal.
Thank you very much. Good. Excellent. All right. Have a good day. And you have my email. If you have any questions, feel free to send it. All the best. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Abra.
Yes.
Bye, Abs.
We miss your dad today.
I know his wife is not well, and
Oy.
so I think he's gonna come tomorrow.
Yeah, he's coming tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
So does he just come in on the invite for tonight?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I'll tell him because I think he
Okay.
wants to come tomorrow. That's
Okay.
better.
Okay. Good.
Okay.
All right. All the best. Take care. Man.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Bob. Bye, Stephen.